And we're gonna kind of walk through these things as we watch these other clips. We're gonna have some clips for one from Deshaun and stuff like that. I want to talk to you about this camp overall, right? And or this day of camp overall. First things, Casey Concepcion. I know I've been butchering his name. I'm awful with names. Concepcion, I believe. Concepcion. I'm just calling him KC. Big KC. You know what I'm saying? He was dealing with some soreness, so it's nothing bad. But hey, man, he's a promising rookie, right? Might as well don't want to. Yeah. Anyway, you don't want to. That boy too is feeling it, man.
I'm a very dangerous man.
You know what I'm saying? But no, he was dealing with some soreness, so he didn't actually get to play in team. And also the defensive tackles. I believe Sam Kamara went out on the cart, in a lot of interior defensive linemen, which the Browns struggled with interior defensive lineman depth later down in the season or later on in the season. I think it was interesting that. And this is a nice tight pass to Luke Floria. What's it called? I think it's interesting to see that they're already, like, we're the first week in camp, first time in pads. The defensive tackles are starting to get beat up good as Shedeur finds his guy Luke Floria on.
I guess there's a quarterback battle going on, Shedeur. That's what I read. I'm first day here. Have you ever been in a quarterback battle at any point in your life?
Yeah, I have. It's been me versus myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you look at it.
Yeah. And even now, it's like it's even the same way. Deshaun goes against himself every day. I go against myself every day. Dylan goes against himself every day, and Taylor does too. So, like, we all just battle ourselves versus, like, it's not each other, because it's not like we're going against each other.
Right.
For sure.
You're your own harshest critic.
Yeah, we're going against the defense.
Yeah.
So it's like, if anything, it's offense versus defense every day.
Okay.
Then not.
Keeping up with him, I just see like the little national report. Blah blah blah. Heated quarterback battle. They're going back and forth. I gotta be honest with you. I don't see the heated quarterback battle. I don't see it. Shout out to our guy Luke Floria, Kent State Mac legend. You know how he gets down. That's for you, Islam. But no, in all seriousness, like I don't know what we talk about. How about you want another angle of it? How about I got all 8 angles of it? So I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I've been very, I want to be realistic. I've been giving all of the haters as much ammo as possible. Okay, Shedeur clean sweeps the first week. No pads. Okay, cool. Yesterday, closed out the camp good. Okay, against the twos. Today, Shedeur Sanders, and I'm about to show you this quarterback tracker because this time, and I'm about to show you some weird stuff happened today, but I couldn't record until later. I had some connection issues. Other stuff was going on. But then we'll get to the quarterback tracker. That was the big play of the day to Luke Floria. Again, Shedeur operating pre-snap, getting some things going in 7-on-7. This time, I believe he finds Harold Fannin. Finds Denzel Boston over the middle. Really great play here. And if I could say, it really seems like, I made a big point to talk about Shedeur's ability and want to be aggressive over the middle. To all these quarterbacks' points from all the clips I've seen, like all these quarterbacks are being really good over the middle. If I could give a special shout out to DG, Dylan Gabriel did throw an interception today. I know. It was
another one.
You know what I'm saying? It was another one, right? But all in all, he made some good throws over the middle. Shedeur looked pretty decisive today. And
this one play from Shedeur Sanders in training camp shows you 3 things. Number 1, it shows you his command at the line of scrimmage. Watch how he pulls the tight end back into the core of the protection to get to a max protection look, knowing that he identifies the defense being in cover 0. Cover 0 means that they're bringing the house. They're playing man coverage on the outside, and they're blitzing everybody to try to make the quarterback get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. Well, by going max protect, Shedeur allows himself to stay calm in the pocket, be able to set his feet on the back foot, and deliver an absolute dime for a touchdown to Gabe Larvidan. All right. Now, number 2, look at the reaction of his teammates on the sideline. This isn't some, we're going through training camp, let's just celebrate with everybody type of celebration. This is genuine excitement because they're seeing this young quarterback develop right in front of their eyes. And then number 3, it shows you, based off the body of work through the first 5 practices of training camp, that Shedeur Sanders should be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Period. End of story. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. He's playing better than anyone else at the position. The locker room believes in him. The results are there on the field. Cleveland Browns, stop prolonging the inevitable. Make Shedeur Sanders your starting quarterback. because he's earned it.
It calls for a timeout there, a little timeout. We're going to huddle up.
Wanting Shedeur to throw in rhythm post-snap, make a decision, throw on time, and actually throw a tad bit early.
Yeah.
Beautiful what he did right there.
He has really had a great second, really a solid practice all around with the ones, but the back half of practice has been really strong from Shedeur.
So now he's got to work on just getting that quick start and putting a full practice together. Let's see if he can get him in the end zone here.
I had a theory, but the videos are just coming out late. So what I was going to initially say is I find it odd how the small amount of clips I was able to get from this one. Because usually Browns do a really good job, plenty of clips, even pre-stuff. Like there just wasn't a lot of clips today in general, I felt like. And I thought that was odd from a day where, seemingly Shedeur ended extremely strong and had a decent day just in totality, right? So first off, what I'm showing you right now is a ball that, Gage, we got to catch this one, man. We got to catch this one. This is the epitome of the way Shedeur has been throwing the football. Now, there's been complaints about operations and stuff like that. It's a new offense. He's a second-year player. I'm not really that concerned about pre-snap stuff because that's stuff that you get coached, you put more time in, and it gets better. And a lot of people have commented that it continues to get better and better. Shedeur Sanders, and don't take it from me. I believe Zach Jackson has said this, which is crazy. Multiple other Browns, and I showed you all those, the best thrower of the football. And I'm not really sure if y'all know.
Welcome back to a Sports Zone USA, the channel that breaks down what's actually happening on the field, not just what teams want you to believe. Before we get into today's breakdown, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now, because this Cleveland Browns quarterback story is developing faster than anyone expected, and you need to be here for every update. Now let's talk about what went down on day 6 of Browns training camp, because something shifted, and it wasn't small. When the Cleveland Browns opened training camp, the script seemed straightforward. Deshaun Watson would walk in, shake off whatever rust remained from his difficult recent seasons, and gradually remind everyone why he carries the contract he does. Shedeur Sanders would push him, create some interesting moments, maybe impress a few reporters, and ultimately give way to the experienced veteran once real competition began. That was the version of events that made sense from the outside. What actually unfolded over the first week of practice was something entirely different. And by the time day 6 arrived, the Browns could no longer lean on the comfortable explanations they had been using to manage the narrative. The story of this quarterback competition didn't begin on day 6. It built toward it layer by layer, through a series of practices that kept raising uncomfortable questions nobody inside the organization seemed particularly eager to answer. From the opening practices, Shedeur Sanders brought an energy and a focus that stood out. He wasn't just going through the motions of a training camp challenge. He was competing, processing information quickly, and delivering the football with the kind of placement that coaches notice even when they're trying not to show it. But every time his performance generated positive attention, a new argument emerged to minimize it. When he looked sharp in the early days, critics pointed to the lack of pads. Without full contact gear, the argument went, defenders couldn't truly disrupt routes, couldn't create the physical chaos of an actual game, and couldn't fully test what a quarterback was capable of managing. Fair enough. Training camp without pads is a controlled environment, and reading too much into those sessions carries real risk. Then the pads went on, and Shedeur kept performing. So the new argument became about the competition level. He was facing second and third string defenders, players who were fighting for roster spots rather than players who would actually start games. The implication was that any reasonably talented quarterback could look good in that situation. That argument had some validity too. Practice statistics against backup defenders don't automatically translate to success when a team runs out its best players. There were also legitimate concerns about his pre-snap operation. The communication before the ball was snapped wasn't always crisp. There were moments where the rhythm felt slightly off, where adjustments came a beat slower than they ideally should. For a second-year player still learning a new offensive system under coordinator Todd Monken, those moments were understandable. But they were real, and they gave skeptics something concrete to point toward. All of those criticisms served a purpose. They created a reasonable foundation for keeping the competition officially open, for giving Watson more time, and for not rushing toward any conclusion that might create disruption before the regular season. Day 6 took most of that foundation apart. The context surrounding Day 6 matters before we get to the numbers. Cleveland's defense had reportedly been one of the more dominant units through the opening days of camp. The defensive front was generating consistent pressure. Coverage was disciplined and closing quickly on receivers. The offense as a whole had not been finding easy answers against the starting defensive group. This wasn't a unit that was giving quarterbacks comfortable looks and forgiving timing. It was a group that had been making life genuinely difficult. That's the environment Shedeur Sanders walked into when he lined up against the first-team defense on Day 6. The reported numbers that came out of that practice were difficult to process at first, not because they were unexpected from a Sanders supporter's perspective, but because the gap they revealed was simply so wide. Shedeur finished the day having completed 21 of his 25 passing attempts, an 84% completion rate, while working against Cleveland's starting defensive unit. Think about what that number represents in context, not against players competing for the bottom of the roster, against the men who will actually suit up on game day and who had been giving the entire offense trouble throughout camp. Now look at the other side of that comparison. Deshaun Watson, working primarily against the second-team defense, the easier, more forgiving assignment, reportedly completed somewhere around 45% of his passes. 45% against the softer competition, 84% against the harder one. If those numbers had been reversed, if Watson was the one posting elite efficiency against the first team while Shedeur struggled with the backups, this conversation would already be over. The veteran would be locked in as the starter and the story would be moving on. But the numbers ran in exactly the wrong direction for anyone invested in the Watson as savior narrative. Numbers in practice only tell part of the story, and anyone who covers football seriously knows that. So let's talk about how those completions were actually happening, because the quality of what Shedeur was doing mattered as much as the volume. He wasn't living underneath. He wasn't throwing 6-yard checkdowns on every snap to protect his completion percentage and make the statistics look clean. He was challenging the defense in places that require real confidence, specifically the middle of the field. For a young quarterback, attacking the middle is one of the most demanding tests in football. Linebackers are reading his eyes and moving underneath his roots. Safeties are rotating from depth and closing fast. One moment of hesitation, one late decision, and a throw that should be a completion becomes a pick. Young quarterbacks who don't trust their own processing instincts tend to avoid that area entirely, drifting toward the sidelines where single coverage is cleaner and the consequences of a mistake are less severe. Shedeur was going in the opposite direction. He was targeting those intermediate windows with confidence, delivering the ball before defenders could fully close, and giving his receivers opportunities to make plays in space after the catch. Several of those throws drew attention not just for the completion itself, but for the placement, the ball arriving precisely where only his receiver had a realistic chance to finish the play. His connection with his bigger receivers was also continuing to develop in visible ways. The timing on several routes showed that quarterback and receiver were beginning to share an understanding of where the football would arrive and when. That kind of chemistry doesn't happen by accident. It comes from repetition, from a quarterback who is seeing the field clearly enough to anticipate rather than simply react. There was also a noticeable improvement in his release speed. Earlier in his career, one of the consistent criticisms directed at Shedeur was that he held the ball too long, waiting for routes to fully develop before committing to his decision. On Day 6, there were multiple snaps where the football was out of his hand almost immediately after the snap. He identified the coverage, processed his options, and delivered before the pass rush could become a real problem. In a new offensive system against a live defense, that kind of quick processing is one of the most telling signs of genuine development. If one period of practice on Day 6 separated this day from everything that had come before it, it was the 2-minute drill. Situational football strips away everything that doesn't matter. There's no opportunity to blame an individual bad rep on noise, miscommunication, or a defender making an exceptional play. The quarterback has to manage the clock while making fast decisions, move the chains without risking the football, communicate clearly while time is running, and understand the full picture of what his offense needs in that exact moment, not just what would make him individually look good. Watson went first. He had the opportunity to make a statement in the most important period of the day, the kind of moment that veteran quarterbacks are supposed to own because they've been there before. Instead, the drive stalled quickly. The offense couldn't generate momentum, couldn't sustain possession, and came off the field without producing any points. In the context of a real game, that drive ends a possession and potentially ends a contest. In the context of this quarterback competition, it handed Shedeur an opportunity. He handled it in a way that was more impressive than any individual highlight throw could have been. He was patient. He didn't try to manufacture one spectacular play that would end the discussion. He understood that the goal was to move the chains, protect the football, and put Cleveland in position to score, not to win the argument in the comments section. He found open targets, got the ball out quickly, and kept the offense organized as the pressure of the situation built. He also demonstrated something that goes beyond arm talent or accuracy. He showed awareness of what the team actually needed. As the drive moved into field goal range, he managed the sideline, stopped the clock, and gave the kicking unit an opportunity to complete the drill. That tells a coaching staff something important. This quarterback is thinking beyond his own performance. He's thinking about the outcome for the team. Watson had the experience. He had been in real 2-minute situations against professional defenses when the playoffs were on the line. Theoretically, that background should have made him the steadier operator in a practice drill. Instead, Shedeur was the quarterback who kept the offense alive and produced points. Watson's group went 3 and out. Something else happened on day 6 that deserves attention, even though it doesn't show up in any practice report. Watson reportedly heard negative reactions from the fans in attendance during practice. Training camp is one of the few opportunities an NFL franchise quarterback gets to stand in front of a crowd that isn't judging him on wins and losses yet. It's supposed to be a chance to reconnect, generate excitement, and remind the people who pack the stands why they should feel good about what's coming. Instead, Watson was navigating an environment where the crowd was responding to his struggles in real time, while the energy shifted noticeably every time Shedeur took the field. That matters beyond optics. Cleveland's fan base has lived through more than its share of instability at quarterback. They've watched the cycle repeat. A new face arrives with promise, the early returns look encouraging, and then the wheels eventually come off. They've learned to identify the difference between a player who is processing the game naturally and one who is working against the moment. What they were seeing from Shedeur was the former. What they were seeing from Watson was the latter. The crowd reaction wasn't manufactured. It was a response to something observable, and the coaching staff would be making a mistake to dismiss it entirely. This conversation requires honesty about both sides, and that means acknowledging where Shedeur still has genuine development ahead of him. His pre-snap operation hasn't always been as sharp as it needs to be. Communication with the offensive line before the ball is snapped has room to grow. The pace of adjustments and calls at the line of scrimmage needs to continue accelerating. These aren't small details, they're the kinds of issues that create negative plays before the snap even happens. His recognition of pressure also needs refinement. Identifying blitz looks earlier, adjusting protection assignments before defenders arrive in the backfield, and avoiding the plays that would become sacks in a real game are all areas where he needs continued improvement. And the sample size is still a training camp sample. What these practices don't tell us is how Shedeur will respond when the lights are fully on, when an entire season's worth of film exists on him, when defenses are scheming specifically to take away what he's shown. Those questions still require answers that only regular season games can provide. But here's what matters about all of those concerns: every single one of them is coachable. Operation speed improves with repetition and experience. Pre-snap communication sharpens as a quarterback becomes more familiar with a system. Pressure recognition develops as a player accumulates more professional reps. The things Shedeur still needs to clean up are exactly the kinds of things that coaching staffs and time can address. The things he's already doing well: placement, timing, decision speed, and the ability to manage a 2-minute drive without unraveling, are the qualities that are far more difficult to develop in a player who hasn't shown them naturally. The Cleveland Browns have been careful in their public language about this quarterback competition. They've kept the door officially open, avoided making any declaration that might create unnecessary pressure, and tried to give both players room to operate without the weight of a final decision hanging over every snap. That approach is understandable from an organizational management perspective, but the practice field is making patience progressively harder to justify. Every time Shedeur has been given a new test during camp, he has responded. When the critics wanted to see him in a more physical practice, he delivered. When they wanted to see him against the first-team defense, he delivered. When they questioned whether his decision-making was fast enough for the professional level, he showed visible improvement in exactly that area. A single impressive day can always be chalked up to a favorable matchup or a hot streak. 2 strong days can be called an encouraging stretch. But when the same pattern holds across an extended period, when the same quarterback keeps answering each new question with another positive response, while the competition is struggling to find rhythm against easier assignments, that's no longer a streak. That's a real indicator of where this competition actually stands. Watson still has opportunities to change the trajectory. Camp isn't over. Preseason games will add another dimension to the evaluation. One truly dominant performance from the veteran could temporarily reset the conversation. But the pressure is compounding with every session. Every time Shedeur moves the chains, the noise around the stadium gets louder, and the decision facing Todd Monken gets more uncomfortable. The Browns can keep calling this a close competition in press conferences. The practice field keeps calling it something else. Day 6 of Cleveland Browns training camp didn't close the door on this quarterback competition, but it pushed it much closer to close than anyone who entered camp, expecting a straightforward outcome, was prepared for. Shedeur Sanders stepped in against the first-team defense, completed passes at an elite rate, attacked the most demanding areas of the field with confidence, and managed the biggest situational period of the day with composure and points. Deshaun Watson, working against a softer assignment, completed less than half his passes and couldn't sustain a 2-minute drive. The gap between those two results, in the difficulty of the competition, in the quality of the execution, and in the outcome that mattered most, is the real story coming out of Day 6. This was never supposed to be this close. It was never supposed to reach a point where Cleveland's coaching staff is genuinely wrestling with the question of whether a second-year player has outperformed a veteran with a massive contract and years of professional experience. And yet here we are. The Browns have a choice to make. They can honor the narrative they came into camp expecting to tell, or they can honor what the field has actually been showing them. Right now, the field is telling one story with increasing clarity, and the name at the center of that story is Shedeur Sanders. That's the breakdown right here on a Sports Zone USA. If this video gave you something to think about, smash that like button and drop your take in the comments below. Do you think Shedeur Sanders has already done enough to earn the starting job in Cleveland, or does Deshaun Watson still deserve more time? We want to hear from you. Subscribe to a Sports Zone USA so you don't miss a single update on this quarterback battle or any other major story developing across the league. Share this video with every football fan in your circle, and we will see you in the next one. Let's go.